Good afternoon, distinguished members of the Maryland Legislature, victims and survivors and allies. I am here today to urge you to please pass HB 1290, a law that creates protections for victims of abuse, physical and non-physical. Coercive control, now known to be the foundation of virtually all abuse, is an exertion of power and control by one person onto another, oftentimes crossing time and space. It doesn't just happen in the relationship, it happens outside of the relationship. It is time that we look beyond the violent incident model when determining domestic abuse and when we are seeking protections for victims and survivors. Physical violence is not the defining characteristic. Abusers very often use coercion and control in order to intimidate, isolate, gaslight, and manipulate victims. It is intimate terrorism when you do not feel safe in your home and are unable to have agency in your life. Some call it a psychological warfare, like a cult that occurs behind closed doors. Oftentimes, victims do not even know that they are being victimized. It's hard to imagine someone you love, or perhaps someone you share children with, purposefully attempting to undermine you, to strip you of your autonomy. Lest you think this is too dramatic, let me tell you the story of a woman who has been an advocate since the age of 19, supporting victims and survivors, adults and children of abuse her entire career. A woman who has worked in child welfare, is a social worker, a therapist, and an educator on the topic of domestic abuse. Like so many victims of abuse, she did not see her own relational dynamics as abusive because as a society we continue to look through the archaic lens of physical violence. Research also affirms that this abuse intensifies post-separation. We tell victims to leave, yet we do not make it safe for them to leave. Or almost as egregious, we do not believe victims, unless of course there is physical evidence, and even then we assume that the violence is a one-off incident, when actually the violence is again often a last resort to retain control by an abuser, and the coercion and control has been a mainstay of the relationship. It's time to look beyond the violent incident model. It's time for Maryland to pass HB 1290. Victims and their children are waiting to be seen.